This is the work session of the Hamilton City Schools Board of Education for August 26, 2021, and we are returning from our executive session. Mr. Holbrook.
Yes, before we begin tonight, I would like to take a moment and observe a moment of silence for the Miners family through a tragic incident that occurred at Bridgeport Elementary with a student that we tragically lost a few days ago. And so at this time, if we could take a moment of silence to honor and recognize that. Thank you. I do want to say before we begin that our entire staff and team and our mental health professionals and everybody has just done an absolutely phenomenal job. And we want the family to know if there is any need that they have, reach out to us, and we will do everything we can to support that family through this very tragic situation. Tonight, I want to take some time and talk a little bit initially about COVID information and discussion. On Tuesday, we sent out a video that was collaboratively done between myself and the City of Hamilton's Health Commissioner, Kay Farrar. And we really want to emphasize the fact that, yes, parents do have choice and we believe in choice. But with that being said, understanding the conditions and the criteria for quarantine and positive cases are also extremely important. And we talk a lot about layers of protection, and there are basically two layers of protection that every student has to minimize or avoid a quarantine. And the first is vaccination. If a student is vaccinated, or a staff member, or an employee, and they are in contact with someone that tests positive, they will not be quarantined. We know that students under 12 years old don't have the opportunity to receive the vaccination yet. With that being said, any student that is in contact with someone that is a positive case and is wearing a mask will not be quarantined. All of that is under the assumption that they are showing no symptoms. Obviously, if they're showing symptoms, they'll be quarantined because there's serious concerns there. A quarantine is 14 days. So that's really approximately 10 to 11 school days, depending on how the calendar falls. But what some may not understand is that there is the possibility of coming back in 8 days from a quarantine. And how that can happen is that on day 5 of the quarantine, if you go and receive a negative test, and then you can come back starting day 8. So anyone that's quarantined, on day 5, they can go and get a test, and if they test negative, they can come back to school or work starting on day 8. And I don't know if that information has been out there, but I think it's really important. We want our kids in school 5 days a week. It is so important. We're receiving a number of phone calls daily on where are you with quarantines and where are you with positive cases. Last year, Governor DeWine required that districts have a dashboard to keep track of such things. It is not a requirement this year, but we have gone ahead and reinstated that dashboard, and that dashboard is up and running as of 5 o'clock this afternoon and is on our district website. As you can see, check the dashboard, we currently have 340 students that are quarantined from Hamilton City Schools, and we have 6 staff members. That seems like a large number, but you have to remember the school district has, between 93 and 9,500 students. So 340 students is really about 3% of our total student population when you look at that in its entirety. And this is the first 14 days of school. So some of those quarantines will drop off in a few days, and we may add a few. And so the point on that is that we are looking at this data extremely close. continue to make decisions on what we're doing based off the data, and right now we're still accumulating the data just due to the fact that we've been in school now. This is the first full week of school we had with the hybrid start of last week. And so we're going to know a little bit more after Labor Day. Also on the dashboard is positive cases. We have 35 positive student cases that have resulted in the 340 quarantines. Many of those student cases, though it is absolutely impossible to determine exactly the origin of where they got the virus, many of them tested positive within the first several days of school, and we do not believe that that happened due to any type of in-school activity because of that. So we're still working through that data and trying to determine those things, and they're very difficult to track back to the exact origin with that. I think my biggest message continues to be, we want students in school. I know our parents do. We want them in school daily. We need to take the protections necessary, either vaccination at the middle and high school level. Almost every single kid is eligible to do that. It's a layer of protection. And if you're not vaccinated, and that's a personal family decision, a mask will also provide that layer of protection as well. We've given the choice to our parents in order to do that, and I think that's the right thing to do at this time. But with that being said, understand that without either of those layers of protection, the chances of quarantine become, exponentially higher. And so that is where we're at with this, but I want to encourage parents that continue to call in. That dashboard is up and running. And we get numerous calls daily on where are you with quarantines. And our dashboard is one of the most comprehensive that I've seen. It addresses every single building. It addresses every single building as far as a quarantine and as far as a positive case throughout the district. And that's updated daily. And so if you have not done so, please check that out on our website. It's under the COVID-19 dashboard link, and it's always going to be the first piece of news that's out there on the website.
Mike, I appreciate that. I know that your team has done a lot to get that back up again, get that whole dashboard up, because that is some work, and I appreciate that. And that's another way to communicate to parents what they need to know on just being open with people and letting them know where we are constantly.
Yeah, I mean, it's important that we look at the data, and we're all looking at the same data. I want to give a special thanks out to Corbin Moore. Corbin, even though he is our assessment gifted and ELL specialist, has one that pretty much created this dashboard. He's got a lot of talent. He has gotten this up and running in about a day and a half from where it was dormant at the end of last year, and I know he's put in a lot of hours doing that. Our nurses, Heineke, Mike Wright in HR, they have all worked tirelessly to be able to get this up and running as quickly as we could. And so at this point, it's not as challenging because it's just a daily input, but we were backtracking 10 days to do it.
There's a lot of information that goes into, a lot of work that goes into getting that done.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't know all the coding lingo and everything that it takes to be able to create this.
The numbers of quarantine kids and all that stuff, which I think people need to realize we're not the ones setting the rules for quarantine. That's how
we do not. Now, we do assist the health commissioner in the contact tracing and kids' names and things like that, but the determination on quarantine is through the City of Hamilton's health commissioner.
Any idea where people can go for the tests, the COVID tests?
If someone is, I don't know exactly where those are, but we can get a list of those and try to provide as far as getting tested to see if they're positive or negative. I know there's a lot of available sites to do that.
Clinic over at Garfield.
Clinic over at Garfield.
Walgreens,
any type of pharmacy,
maybe
such
that's
as
something we need to put out
CVS,
there.
Walgreens, and our pharmacy clinic over at Garfield are all viable options. We don't have a lot of people doing that.
Do we offer the vaccination at the clinic?
I don't believe we do, but I can tell you right now, there's been a couple people that have reached out and asked where they can go and get vaccinated. I was able to contact the City of Hamilton's Health Commissioner. They had them in within an hour. And so, you know, some of the little clinics associated with Kroger, those, it's not an issue on finding a vaccination site. And if people need help with that, call us. I can get an answer really quick on the quickest way to do that.
Okay, thanks, Ben.
Those are good questions.
Thanks. You want to talk about policy?
One of the things
Well, I'm
that,
sorry, did anyone else have questions?
No, sir.
Okay.
one of the things that we've been looking at is our public participation policy regarding board meetings. And we want to be more transparent and inclusive with what we are doing with our meetings. And one of the things that currently is in policy, it prohibits some groups that we don't think it should prohibit from speaking to the board in regular session. And so what you have in front of you is a recommendation, and what you see is the redlined portion. That is the portion we currently have. And you can see the recommendations on changing some of the language within that policy. And this was vetted through our attorneys and through sunshine law specialists with our attorneys on some of that language. And I think the intent was to be it more inclusive, so if a parent that maybe open enrolled their child but did not live in the district and wanted to speak to the board would have the opportunity to do so. They do have but right now under current policy, anybody that isn't a resident of Hamilton City Schools could not speak. Well, it makes sense that the parent would be able to speak to the board if he or she chose to do so. I think the other thing that we have is that if we have an employee that works for the district but does not live in the district, current policy prohibits them from being able to address the board in public session. And so those are some of the major tweaks that we're looking at doing this. And obviously, if you are a resident within Hamilton City Schools, you have the right to certainly speak to the board in public session. But we're trying to expand that a little bit to make sense and be inclusive of more individuals.
Well, the other thing was the 7-day, I want to say 7-day waiting period or whatever you want to call it.
And there is a process
Yeah.
the night of the board meeting that you would have to come in and sign up, and you know, you need to give your address and name and affiliation and all of that, but there's not going to be a 7-day waiting period, and if you miss that window, you don't get an opportunity to speak. I think certain issues come up frequently that may require, may not, you may not be able to give 7 days notice on that, and I think that everybody should have the opportunity to speak.
Well, we want people to feel free to come to the meetings. I
Yes.
mean, that's just part of being an open board, and so people can be participating if they want to.
These are good changes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Very good
agree, I like
changes.
these.
So you'll put it on the agenda.
So what's going to happen is that on September 9th, you'll have and anytime you have board policy, you have to have 2 readings. There'll be a first reading on September 9th, and then the final reading will be at our board meeting in October, and then it'll become policy. So there is a legal process that we have to go through with that, but my recommendation would be to endorse the changes as you have in front of you at the September 9th meeting.
Thanks, Mike. Educators United?
One of the biggest things that we have worked on, and I'll give Mike Wright a lot of credit in our human resource department, is I really wanted to work on trying to be more diverse and inclusive with our hiring practices and how we're approaching different things. Early in the summer, myself and the superintendent of Lakota, Fairfield, Middletown, Butler Tech, and Talawanda came together, and we developed a consortium, and we named the consortium Educators United. And what that is it's going to be a consortium from all of the districts of individuals that are diverse, and we want to make sure that inclusive-wise, they have an opportunity to speak with others in other districts that may be going through some of the same challenges that they are. And so each one of these individuals have been invited to the first session of that, which will be held in the middle of September. And there won't be individuals just from Hamilton. There'll be individuals from all of the districts that chose to participate in that, and that's a step. It's not going to be the only step, but it's a first step in trying to, there's some real significant challenges out there with diversity, with inclusion, with differences in backgrounds and understandings in that, and I think that this is a step in the right direction on trying to do that. And so each of you have got a copy of the invitation that was hand-delivered today to these individuals. And and we even recruited a facilitator that's a former superintendent from an area school that will facilitate these discussions. We didn't want anybody from the districts to be there. We want this to be a real beneficial, open, honest dialogue. And sometimes when certain people are sitting in the room, that doesn't happen. And so we wanted to make sure that this was somewhat meaningful. And the individual we have, I will say, her name's Adrienne James. She's the former superintendent of the Sycamore City Schools. She has a lot of experience in work in this area, and I'm very confident that she can make a very positive initial contribution to this program. And I don't know where it's going to go. It's going to grow. We hope to grow it, but I don't know what evolves from this, but it's an initial step.
Well, and we've had those discussions several times about inclusion and trying to find out. And there's trouble. I mean, we've always had trouble in some respect of trying to find minority applicants for our district, and I think this is a step in the right direction. And working with the other superintendents just makes a lot of sense to me.
The challenge in education right now is certainly pools of applicants.
Definitely.
And pools of applicants of minority candidates is even slimmer. And so it's real important to find out why that is. It's real important to make sure that the people that we do hire are comfortable, that we're servicing and doing everything we can for them to be successful. And I think that's that way for every employee.
Oh, yeah.
But I think there's some challenges there with a minority candidate that certainly doesn't exist in other realms. And I think that's really important that we recognize that. And not only recognize it, we can sit and talk about it all we want. What are we going to do about it? And this is a step in that direction.
I think this is definitely needed and necessary to be that we're approaching this and having a conversation, because like you said, if we just continue to meet just to meet but don't put any action behind these meetings, then we'll sit here 5 years from now, continue to meet just to meet and not addressing the potential issues or issues that they're having. I mean, granted, we understand that the pool of candidates are definitely slim, but I think that's where, we take the extra step to go above and beyond to make sure that we're doing everything that we possibly can to make sure that we close that gap and that we, meet those needs within our district, because, I believe that we have the right, we have people that are, that are go-getters and that are willing to put their heads around it. So I'm glad that there's a team of people to be able to bring their minds to wrap around this versus just being, us just trying to figure it out. But there's other minds that are coming to the table to help, bring some perspective and light as to how, they have been successful or not been successful. So it's like, oh, okay, you've been going through that too as well. So you definitely find strength in numbers. So hopefully we'll find that strength in numbers to be able to, start seeing some changes come from this. Obviously, will things be immediate, but I want to be able to, give an answer when people in the community ask me, well, what's the deal with, minorities in the district. They'll be able to give some answer to say, hey, this is something that we're doing. We do have Educators United that are, we are having these conversations. So I want to be able to have that information because the question, absolutely, because the question is there and it does come up, and I do get those questions. So I'm, extremely happy about that.
And I think one of the things that we all need to be prepared for is to hear things we don't like.
Yes.
That's what's going to evolve from this. We're going to hear things that we may not like. That's okay. That's part of the process. And it's not about making people uncomfortable, but you know what? Everybody has a different orientation, a different background, a different awareness, and we all have different blind spots. And I think that that's really important to recognize. And if you're hearing that, you can do something about it.
If you don't hear about it, then
I think
you're not
sometimes a
going to.
lack of awareness is a huge issue, and I'm okay with that. I would rather be aware and be able to adjust than be blinded.
And it's, not only obviously a recruitment, but this is this is the retention.
Well, absolutely.
Of our
I-
existing
Exactly.
staff. So
I
it's
mean,
important
we've done a
to keep
pretty
that.
good job of retaining teachers over the last several years, but we need to take some additional steps. And this is one of those. I think this can be a retention piece, but I also think it can be much broader than that.
Yes.
I can see this changing some of our policies, some of our outlooks on different things based off what evolves from this.
Yeah. Good point.
Thank you, Mike. That's exciting to hear. Schuler Benny Hoffman development. We've got some,
Well, this is something that
Interesting
for the
stuff.
five of you to actually have a discussion about this, obviously, is no vote tonight or anything, it's just
Yeah.
a discussion, and this was discussed last night at City Council. And basically, they want to take the Schuler Benny Hoffman development and looking at converting that into apartments. And Lauren, you and I had the opportunity to go down and visit some apartments that were models similar to that down in Kings Mills.
yeah,
And right now, from what I've read, it's not really a TIF, it's more of a tax abatement is what that is. And what I can tell you is that potentially, if you look at what the city's doing, they're going to invest potentially over $3 million into this, with the understanding that the investor is going to invest a minimum of $20 million. And, that's assuming that the investor gets all the historic tax credits, and there's some other things that they're looking to get. There's T-MUD things that are included with that. But overall, I think that those are important numbers for us to look at. I am not the expert on this, and so I'm going to graciously
We have an expert
turn
on
to
this? Oh, we have an expert.
Mr. Hancock,
We have
our
an expert.
treasurer,
I missed that.
on this, as he is just more, abreast of everything that's going on than I am. And so,
Well, I thought a good place to start on this tonight would be tax abatements versus tax increment financing. What is the very basic difference between these two? This is only about 5 slides long, and then I'm going to share with you a calculation of what the proposal is from the school side, just so you understand it, because quite frankly, when I shared it with Mike, he goes, really? The numbers don't necessarily work the way you think they would. So a tax abatement, and this is the only slide we're going to do on tax abatement here. The city can grant that up to a 75% for a period of 10 years without your approval. That's the way it is in the state law. And now, that's an average, actually. When I went through the state revised code, it says amounts that average more than 75%. So they could come up with some configuration over their 10 years. I've never seen it done, but they could. If it goes above that 75% for 10 years, then that's where the board has to approve it. And now, the real functional difference between a tax abatement and a TIF. Under a tax abatement, the property owner, the business in this case, is not going to pay those taxes. Under a TIF, they're going to continue to pay the same amount that they would have paid. So they're going to pay essentially the taxes, but it's going to be put into a fund over at the county auditor's office where they're going to have access to it at the city, ultimately is where it's going to go. And the city's going to be able to bond that money and spend that money on infrastructure improvements related to the project. We've had them before in this town. The Lowe's one is a long-running one where they built the road up between the two Lowe's and Walmart, and so they have existed, and that's basically the difference between the two. So
if I may, speaking of though,
it's a TIF.
it is a TIF, so that money went into a fund.
It's going to start going into the fund now. Is there anything in the fund now? Probably not, because they're in construction. So we're probably a year or two away from the way taxes roll.
Okay.
But the Lowe's and Walmart was an abatement.
No, it was TIF.
It was a
TIF.
TIF as well.
TIF.
Okay.
Still in effect. They're using it for, and they can point to other projects. I think they're probably pointing to the project down there in front of Highland right now. Is probably where some of it's been used.
Didn't we have to get Talawanda approval on that too?
Talawanda was involved in that because the actual line between those buildings goes diagonally, the school district line. You wouldn't think that to look at the topography, but the school district lines dissect both buildings.
I remember, because we dealt with that when I was on the first time.
Yeah, so it was clear back in it was back in the early 90s, it seems like. It's been back here a good ways. So again, on the tax increment financing, that property owner is going to continue to make those payments, and this just tells you how that works. And again, they can issue debt service to do that, and I believe that's probably what was done to get the road built over at between Lowe's and Walmart. Under the tax increment financing, the increase in value resulting from the private improvements, but not the value of the existing real estate at the time, is what gets abated or TIFed in that case. So
Okay.
that's the money that goes in there. And it may be up to a 10-year period for 75% of the average value without approval of the district. In TIFs, though, you can go up to 30 years. The abatements, I'm seeing 15 years max on those with school district approval is the only thing I could find today, and I've looked at various sources, but the TIFs, I do know, they go for up to 30 years with school district approval.
So Bob, does the appraised value, do they continue to pay the appraised value, the original, before the improvement, taxes still come to the school district? Okay.
Yeah.
It's everything above
It's going to
that?
be everything above that.
Okay.
But in a project like Spooky Nook, it wasn't a lot.
Yeah,
obviously.
oh, sure.
Then again, very similar to the abatement, anything above 10 years or for more than 75%, it's going to require your approval. And in this case, it cannot exceed 100%, which is common sense, and
So I'm so clear on this, on tax increment financing, on the improvement to it, any monies collected, taxes go into a city account over in the auditor's office.
yeah, the auditor's office will collect it, and then it will be on the settlement sheet that we receive, so the city of Hamilton receives, we receive for our taxes, and it'll be delineated as to what fund do they have to put it into. They have a fund on their books that they have to
They can do infrastructure, that type of thing.
relate to.
For that, related to that.
Related to that project, but it is fairly flexible on that one. We clear on how those
Sure.
work? So,
Yeah.
so essentially, tax increment financing, they're going to pay their taxes to accomplish some of the costs that they have associated with the project that they would have had to pay otherwise.
So the city will get some of their money back through the tax increment financing.
Well, no, the cities, it does that to all the taxes.
But the city can use money out of that fund to do infrastructure.
Yeah.
That they would otherwise have to pay.
Yeah.
So
Now,
we don't get anything out of that.
not on that piece. Now, there is a piece out there, and the Lowe's Walmart had worked like that. They didn't have to ask our approval to get to 30-year. And in that case, that's a special piece for cities. It's not that way for local districts. In that case, the school district collects the same amount of taxes they would have collected had the abatement or the TIF in this case not been granted. We like those. We get all the money we would have received, and there's no taxable valuation on it in terms of state funding. You don't have a lot of that anymore. But that was really a good deal for a long time out there with Lowe's Walmart. Now I want to share with you some numbers, because even I was surprised a little bit when I punched this up, and we've checked it multiple ways, and it is the way it works. Let me get this thing so you can see it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank
we can mess with that. Let's move this down. Oop, better click on this one. Okay, those are pretty decent. The difference between, and this is looking at an abatement. What's the difference between a 15-year abatement at 100% and a 10-year abatement at 75%? Keeping in mind the latter is one they can do without your approval. The former, the one in the left column, they have to seek your approval for. So just for example, you mentioned a $20 million investment. If that was the assessed value, you would end up with a taxable value of 7 million or 5.25 million. You apply the tax rate. In this case, the tax rate I'm using is the effective tax rate class 2 without the bonded debt. And the reason I didn't use the bonded debt, because the bonded debt's going to adjust and collect. Often it has to collect, so it will be fine.
And class 2 meaning?
Commercial industrial.
If I may, why do you have two amounts in the investment column, in the investment row? Because
In the first case, it's the abatement. Say if it's a 100% abatement of a $20 million project, it's an abated value of $20 million. If it's a 75% value,
okay,
of
that's
it,
where you got. Okay.
that's how those work.
Okay, gotcha.
So the annual taxes for this portion would be 216 and 162. You multiply it out by the 15 years and the 10 years. The difference between the two is it's exactly double. And when you start thinking about it, here's how it makes sense. I mean, the cross-check on it is on 15 years' time at 100% abatement, you got 4 quarters, so it equals 60. And I'm dividing it into quarters because of the 25%, the 75% abatement. When you take the 75% abatement over 10 years, it would equal 30 quarters. They're exactly half. Proves out the math on that, and that's why it's doing that. So when a district gives an abatement up to 15 years, they're basically doubling the amount that is being abated over that time period. It's just something you need to be aware of, so you know how it is. All this does down here, we may provide this to you in a pocket form, laminated. This is just doing it based on $1 million of valuation. It just allows you to quickly calculate stuff into the future to know what's worth, but it doesn't take any time at all to throw that together.
But you're using abatement in this case, and this is an example of what TIF is?
No, this is abatement. This is abatement.
Okay.
Because remember, TIF, they're gonna pay the taxes in, and it's gonna be diverted out if we have an agreement. If we don't have an agreement, they're gonna pay the taxes, and we're gonna get our share, and the city's left with all the other taxing entities, including theirs. They get a much smaller piece. So,
What are they asking for, TIF or abatement?
what I read was abatement.
Abatement?
Is everything-
It says in the contract that I read, it says abatement.
Yeah.
And you know, we've always been referring to that as a TIF, but you know, everything that I've read, it doesn't say TIF, it says abatement. And that caught Bob's attention. He spoke to me this morning, and I said, quite frankly, I said, explain to me the difference. Because
I've never heard that explanation about a TIF.
So let me ask you a question, Bob. Is there I guess I'm getting confused here. If there's a calculation that says if you took the same scenario and it's a TIF, what happens with these I'm
In
getting
a
confused.
TIF scenario, if we want to do that, we just call this a TIF for a moment. Actually, what's going to happen in a TIF, when you go up into this calculation,
Yeah.
you'll see up here in the corner, you can hardly see it. I don't know if I can't expand that. I can't expand that.
You mean your formula?
The 39, it has -4 and it has -4.
Oh, I see.
4.5 and -4. That is your bonded debt rate right now.
And is that in cell C,
C10, or B10 and C10.
okay.
That's how that.
Sorry, I don't mean to get so.
That's fine. So we understand how those rolls. Now, if I was going to do a TIF, what I would do is I'd come in here and I'd say, okay, let's wipe this out. Because on a TIF, they're going to pay the full effective tax rate.
Okay.
Has nothing to do with us at this time, under the assumption that they wanted to do, we got your permission and we said yes. So we'll do that scenario. Then there would be $275,000 a year going into that fund, $275,694 going into that fund for them to do infrastructure improvements. What they would do, if they would probably bond, X million of dollars that would drive back to that being the debt service, meeting the debt service payments. So it might, whatever that.
So they basically are using that as collateral.
They're using it as a funding stream to go ahead and get the
Funding stream more than anything else.
Yeah.
Well, but if they're putting bonds out.
But they're paying the bond.
bonds, and that becomes their funding stream to pay those bonds going forward. Yeah.
So So really, where you have to see is that how much money they're actually cash they're putting into the deal, plus, I mean, I guess what you're trying to say is that we lose.
That's what, yeah, the previous calculation is just showing the foregoing, and we'd have to back out to that. Because in that particular piece, I'm saying, we're not gonna look at the bonded debt piece, we're just gonna look at the general fund and the permanent improvement levies. Because those are monies that truly you would not have.
But
The
again-
bonded debt is automatically, it's gonna adjust, it has to adjust to pay the payment.
So again, what's the city asking for, 75 to 10 years?
No, they're asking 15 years, 100%.
100%.
They
Abatement.
can do
Abatement.
75 at 10 without your approval.
Yeah, that's right.
And all this is to show you is that basically it's double what the minimum is. Just so you understand how they work. Because when you say,
But if nothing is done to this property,
oh yeah, you got that issue as well. You got to have all those discussions.
yeah, and, yeah.
So you have to look at it from what is, I mean, some of that, instead of in the dollars and cents of it, you know, this black and white piece is the ancillary benefit to the community as a
Exactly.
result of the development.
Yeah. And that's for the board to decide. We just want you to be comfortable knowing exactly what the numbers are and how they work as you make a decision.
Well, one is, we would be giving up over a life of it for 10 years. How much would we be losing out on?
Well, it would be a 15-year giving theirs, and you'd be out 1.6 million.
Okay.
Is what you would not receive. It wouldn't be a reduction, it'd just be revenue you didn't get.
But if they don't do anything to the property, what's that property, what are we getting?
Oh, probably next to nothing, you know.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, there's nothing coming in
Yeah.
right
But there's
now.
always the potential that, how many units are going to be in there?
I think a little over 100.
Well,
Yeah.
We could wind up with additional students that
Well,
we're required
when
to
we
educate.
went to see what this looked like at Cartridge, there were no families living there.
But that's a different area.
Yeah, but I think
different locale.
the pricing that we heard was more geared toward the young professional than family.
Yeah,
But
we
you're
don't
right,
have
you're
enough
right.
stock, we don't have enough residential stock now for a lot of our new teachers that are
Yeah.
coming in to be able to even live
Yeah.
here. So I guess from my perspective, knowing what the dollars is helpful, and I think you have to take it on a case-by-case basis. But, you know, in the long run, from an economic development perspective, is that in the best interest of not only the city, but the school district? So that's where you have to, I mean, I don't think you can just look at it as that we're gonna lose that money, because we really aren't losing that money, because we're not making that kind of money right now with no development there.
No.
Yeah.
But we're also losing out on a potential other development that might go in there. I mean, it's speculative, I mean,
Yeah.
but.
Right,
you
right.
know, we don't know. But I know that there's not enough right now for our young professionals, but you have Cohen doing his project down on Main Street, you know, who did the Markham. There's gonna be additional apartments going in there. You hear other apartments going in all over the.
And
at
they're
some point,
filling
we're-
up.
And we're gonna, at some point, we're gonna have a glut, and you will have families moving into these, because rents will go down.
I don't, I mean, I can see both sides of it, but I
Yeah.
also think if you look at where they're putting this in that community, they need a boost in that
I don't
community.
disagree with
Yeah.
that. I just don't want 5 years from now, all of a sudden, we're like, what, look at this, we have all these families moving in there. You know, we're overcrowding Linden and, Riverview. I just don't want to, but I agree, it needs a boost, and we need to work with the city on these.
Right,
I think-
because the bottom line is, they're the only ones that are gonna bring us these projects, because they're the ones that are doing economic development, not
And I'm
us.
just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, no, I understand, I totally agree with you.
What are the
I'm-
unit sizes for these apartments?
Huh?
What are the unit sizes?
What do we see, Mike, about 1 and 2 bedrooms?
Yeah, one and two, I
Studios.
didn't see anything more than 2 bedrooms. They
Yeah.
were between about 900 to 1,300 square feet.
Yeah,
is
very
what I saw.
industrial,
Yeah.
that hip industrial
It
look.
was an industrial look.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, I don't it's not that I don't don't disagree with what you're saying, Dave, because it's sort of like what if. I mean, everything's a what if. Well, what if we don't do it? And what if we do it, you know? And so I think you just have to make the most educated decision based on what
And I agree.
information you
I-
have
I-
at this
I
point
just
in
want to
time.
throw that out.
No,
so
no,
we have all
no,
the
I
information.
totally agree.
Well, and that's one of the things that we discussed with the developers too, was, that's why I wanted to see what the mix of people were like at that other apartment.
Yeah.
And then that other apartment complex, there was a lot of people that were retired or semi-retired. I mean, something like 30% of the people were in that range, so.
But one of the things they did say is that many of the folks that were retired were taking advantage of the housing market right now, where they sold their house for a significant profit. They're waiting for the market to come back to them, and so they rented for a period of time.
Right.
That's at least what we understood.
And this won't come online, from my understanding, for a number of years, if I'm not mistaken, something like 3 or 4 years.
Well,
They've
I
got
do
long-
think there's some hurdles that have to,
A lot
the
of
financing
things.
has to come together, the historical tax credit has to be granted.
That's the one solution.
And
Yeah.
quite
Yeah.
frankly, they're looking at probably into 2023 or 2024 with this, is
Yeah.
kind of that timeline.
I mean, to even start construction.
Well, I think there's some language, if you look real closely at the agreement, that talks about if they haven't started by June of 2024, if I remember correctly, then deal's off, basically.
I think we have to take a look at it because we're already seeing a little bit of the residual, the spooking up, you know, restaurants starting to want to come in, we're on High Street, Main Street, and other projects will be coming in eventually, and, you know, I think we have to look at that residual down there in Lindenwall as well. Will this be a catalyst to change that whole neighborhood?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I just think it's always the
and
best
those neighborhoods.
interest of the community as a whole for the district and the city to try and work together.
Exactly.
And I think and I think we've got a good working relationship with the city at this point.
Well, and one of the things is, we don't want to be trying to make decisions at the last minute.
Right.
We've asked for leeway,
Yes.
have a lot of time for us to look at it. And that way Bob can give us some numbers on,
Yeah.
what did the actual numbers,
Like he did tonight.
like he
Yeah.
did tonight.
Which was
I mean,
great. I
that's,
appreciate it.
that's an interesting
Yeah.
Yeah,
function there, to see that double and just
And you wouldn't
change.
think, you think, so, you
Yeah,
know, 15 years, 100%, 75% for 10 years. and
Yeah.
Mathematically, in your mind,
Yeah, it
you
doesn't-
don't think double.
yeah.
yeah, and I also didn't realize that money on a TIF went into the county where
Yeah.
they can pull for
Yeah.
infrastructure, which I get
Yeah.
that,
The
you
county
know,
collects it and sends it on to them.
right. It's not like they're collecting it and keeping it, they're,
No, it's just like any other tax
right.
that they do.
So in 2 weeks, we'll take it to regular, to our regular meeting to vote on that, but we'll have more discussion at our next meeting about this. But I think the thought is that each time that we are brought these things, is that we have an opportunity to discuss it, so we
Right.
understand what's going on.
Right.
We have a better understanding of it.
Yeah.
So. Bob, thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Bob.
thanks.
Thanks. I appreciate you telling, I had no idea that the TIF went into something. I thought it was just something that they didn't mess with.
But we also need to make sure that we get clarification. If the contract says abatement, we need to know,
Which one we're talking?
what are we talking
Yeah.
about?
Because
Because I just
we've
thought
all
TIF, they
been
just
under
didn't pay
pretty
taxes.
discretion.
Yeah.
Oh, no, they're basically, they're using their tax money to do
So
building
they do pay the
Right.
taxes,
Yeah.
and then the city
Right.
takes that
Yeah.
for the infrastructure.
But the big thing is, the city is paying a lot of money to make
Yeah.
these projects happen. It's not like they don't have any dog in the fight or skin in the game.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, you know, you get 100 units in there, and maybe 2 couples living in there with income taxes,
Yeah,
you know, and they get income tax money,
Yeah.
and
yeah. It's,
so it's,
I think they see it as more of an economic,
yeah.
they're not gonna be making a lot of money, but more of an economic boost for that whole.
Yeah, I don't think they look at it,
Yeah.
they are gonna get that, but I don't think that's
Never
the
to make
make or
up
break
the
of them.
millions and millions of dollars, so.
Yeah.
No.
But I think it's a neat project, and seeing what they did with the building at Cartridge.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've
That,
seen it.
I mean, that is a really cool project, and I hope it goes through.
Yeah.
All right, Ms. Hubbard.
Yes, the next item that you have in your packets tonight, you have a brief summation on where we are with our BarTech contract. BarTech helps assist with our technology services throughout the district. Back in 2018, there was a 5-year contract signed. That contract expires in June of this year or next year, 2022. So with that being said, I am requesting the board to give us the authority to do some exploratory searches on what services would be best for this district. And that could include BarTech along with other vendors, but we have to explore some of the things that are out there and look at what is the best use of those dollars to service our district from a technology standpoint. We have TLCs in our district, in each of our buildings that we employ. They aren't experts. BarTech does more of the heavy lifting stuff with regard to equipment, servers, you know, things of that nature. Some of the coding and some of that. You know, our technology folks do a little bit more on the educational side. But I think that it's always healthy to look at what alternatives are out there and available for us. And so this is a long process. It's a process we need to be extremely careful with. You start losing things from a technology standpoint. I like to have people paid twice a month.
Yeah.
I really do too. We like that too.
And with that being said, you know, there's tentacles of this in almost every piece of operation that we do, from payroll to busing and transportation, to students' food services accounts, to our HVAC, to our badge system. I could go on, but this touches almost everything. And so with that being said, I'm asking the board's permission to start seeking some options to present to you on what that can look like after June
I
of
think it's
this year.
just prudent for us to
Right.
do that. I mean, with the importance, I mean, in just the few years, I mean, just in the past few years, our reliance on technology for virtual learning and everything else we're doing, this is a integral part of what we do as a school district, and we have to have the very best doing on the spot. And BarTech can go up against anybody else, but we need the best people.
And I think
possible.
one of the criteria that I've listed, I mean, there's a number of things that I've jotted down, but one of the things that's really important to me is someone that is proactive. You know, technology is so quickly changing all the time and ever changing. I need someone to be proactive, to see potential pitfalls ahead of time instead of being reactive on things. We need someone with that vision, and obviously BarTech will certainly, I'm sure, vie to continue with the services, but I think we would not be doing ourselves the service that we should be if we did not explore
Well, we
all
depend on
options.
this. Our community expects this out of us too, so.
My question, 5 years is a long time
I would
for a
never
contract.
commit to a 5-year contract.
Okay.
And quite frankly, this was not a contract that I committed to, signed. It was prior to my time, and so I inherited
Especially on
the back
technology.
end.
Technology,
Yeah, I
how
mean,
fast
it
things go.
changes.
Now, in fairness, I do think that there were some discounts that were associated due
Okay.
to the length of the contract as well, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
But that's, I don't know a whole lot about how that was negotiated, just because it was before my time.
Okay.
I think it's great, then we can discuss at the time when we bring the proposals to us. I mean, there's a lot of shortcomings in the last couple of years with BarTech and disappointments with their service, and we can address that at that time.
And I think that's a piece of it. And do we take some of the money that we're investing in BarTech and invest it in hires for the district? And the reason I say that is that BarTech has had a challenge retaining employees, and it's been a lot of rotation with a lot of new individuals coming in. And it's kind of like, if you're someone that actually works for the district or for an organization, I think you might be a little more committed than someone that is rented out. And they've had a hard time retaining some
I
folks
think
in
we're
the past.
interested in any options that you bring to us. Having our own in-house
Well,
technology group would be,
Yeah, and I will tell
We're
you,
big
I'm
enough to
I'm gonna
be
lean
doing that.
heavily on the people that understand this a little better than I do. This is
We appreciate that.
probably not, I mean,
I
I can use a computer, but I can't code it. I will just tell you. And I understand that, but we have some really talented, very intelligent individuals that can help us with this.
Do we have, are you aware of many districts having their own in-house?
It varies from district to district.
I mean, we're a large, we're at what, 18th in the
I do
state?
believe for the most part, Middletown does most of their stuff and stuff in-house. I know Butler Tech uses Forward Edge for some things, as does Lakota. I am not sure what Fairfield does.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
We have to outweigh the advantages and disadvantages.
And so
Yeah.
one of the things I would like to do is start having some discussions on even other districts, what they're using. Are they happy with it? You know, and looking at some different, I mean, this is going to be a big account for
Yeah.
someone.
Yeah,
But just historically speaking, I was on the school board when we hired BarTech the first time.
Yeah.
Went through all the meetings with them up at their office and all that. And we had in-house prior to BarTech, and it was, Bob can attest, it was a mess.
mhm.
Yeah.
Phones weren't working, I mean, the technology was behind. And really, BarTech sold us on going with them. And the first couple of years, 3 or 4 years, it was pretty rocky. It was a bad time. And from what I gather, it's
You got
not
better
where
over
we've gotten to
time.
be.
It got better, but, yeah.
Yeah, but not where we.
That first year though, I mean, there were meetings almost daily.
Yeah.
Updates trying to get.
Well, we almost walked out of the contract at one point, because it was that bad.
Well, yeah, we didn't quite be, I was,
Yeah.
But
It
I
was
do
rocky.
think there's probably a gray area there where we're probably going to need to contract out with someone for some services, but there also, are there some things that we can capture back and do internally as well? I don't know. I mean, I'll be able to speak a little more intelligently about it after we do
Okay.
this.
Just
Because this
because-
is going to take a 3 to 4 to 5, this
Yeah.
isn't going to be a 3-week vetting
No.
process.
Yeah.
It's going to take a long time.
Yeah, well, we've got some time.
Yeah, if we have this ready to go, we need this ready to go, obviously, by July 1st of 2022.
Right.
But it's gonna take us 6 to 9 months at least to go through this piece, because
Yeah,
we wanna get this right
yeah.
for everybody. And the reliance now is, even in 2013, when you did this, Dave, think about 8 years ago where we are just in normal, everyday functioning of life with technology. I mean, that was only 8 years ago. And what we're doing now is significantly different than even then. So, I mean, we gotta get this right.
It'd be interesting to see different scenarios.
Yeah.
Yeah, be interesting. Thanks, Mike. You want to talk about the manufacturing program?
Yes, one of the things that's happening at Hamilton High School is we obviously, several years ago, joined in a collaborative group with Butler Tech. And they have a number of programs over at the high school. One of the new programs is a manufacturing program. And it basically is, Butler Tech went to the Hamilton Community Foundation, asked for some money to be able to purchase a milling machine and some welding equipment. And one of the things that we've tried to listen to over the last several years is, are the programs that we're offering in career tech aligned with the job market? I think that's really important. And not just national job market. What is the local and regional job market? Because sometimes those differ significantly, and they even differ in Ohio. There's some differences between Northeast Ohio and Southwest Ohio with that. One of the things we continually heard is the lack of qualified, certified welders and everything in the trades. And so we've worked really hard, and I will give kudos to Marnie Durham from Butler Tech, has worked really hard. John Graft has worked really hard on trying to get some of these programs, not just to Butler Tech, but to Hamilton High School. And I think that that's a really important piece to this. And so these welding machines and equipment have arrived. They're still doing some things with electricity and proper ventilation. And putting a welding lab together is an expensive endeavor, and it takes a lot of those components. And we're close to being done. Our electricians work right with Butler Tech on that installation piece, since it is at our high school. And so that's where we're at. And I think, Mr. Isgro, you were the one that was asking about this manufacturing piece, but I think this is going to be a tremendous asset for our kids and with opportunities that are out there. And every single employer that I've spoken to, one of the first things that they're telling us is that have your kids graduate with a credential in the trades, and there are job opportunities out there starting day one. And so,
Good paying jobs.
and the welding in particular,
Yeah.
significantly good starting salaries for an 18-year-old coming out of high school. And so with that being said, we're making some adjustments with that. We could not do this without the relationship with Butler Tech. I will say that publicly, and the fact that, you know, they have been tremendously helpful in not only offering a variety of course offerings for our kids. Some of those are at D. Russell Lee and over on the Butler Tech campus. Some of those have changed at the high school campus. But we now offer a much broader range for students, and we're going to start seeing the benefits of that. We've already started to a little bit, but as we continue to expand and enhance the relationship, you know, it's about what, I think this is our third year associated with Butler Tech. So now that kid that was a sophomore when we first started doing this is now a senior, and that's when we're going to start seeing the benefits of this.
Mr. Holbrook, and I might be wrong on this, but at one time, wasn't IBDW coming over to the high school and recruiting, trying to find some students to recruit to go straight from high school to the apprenticeship in the electricians?
That, I think not only them,
Yes.
but many other groups were as well. And one of the things that kind of, I'm going to piggyback off of this, is that, you know, we hired Chris Cannell to do some work for us, and Chris has been out busting his rear to get different organizations to offer internships for many of our students. And so we're looking at rededicating that type of internship. And some of this is exactly that. I want this to be an internship where when kids leave us, there's jobs available. And I think it feeds into exactly what Butler Tech talks about. Butler Tech has something called the fifth day experience, where basically that kid on that fifth day doesn't come to a traditional brick and mortar school building necessarily. They may be out in an internship. They may be doing something that feeds right into a lot of what they're doing, and it feeds right into what we want as well. One of the biggest things that I think we undervalue in education is experiences, student experiences. And that isn't always inside a classroom for 40 minutes a day for 184 days. And we need to expose our kids to a variety of different experiences. And I think that that's part of our job as educators. And I think that the broader the scope that we can give kids as far as experiences, the more successful they're going to be. And with all of that being said, I think that this is just one example of the shift that we're trying to make with our academic programming, as far as that's great. You've got career tech programming, and I think that in the past, career tech programming has gotten a negative connotation. You know, and unfortunately, that could not be further from the truth in today's world.
Yeah.
And so we're going to continue to align programming with need, and we're going to continue to work. I'm grateful to the Community Foundation for the donation in order to purchase some of the equipment that was necessarily to get this
cheap
welding.
stuff, yeah.
It's not cheap stuff. So that's where we're at with that right now. And later in the year, I am going to have someone from Butler Tech actually come and present on many of the collaborative efforts that we're doing with.
That'd be great. I was wondering how many kids are in programs and.
Yeah, and
stuff like
all of that. I couldn't tell you that off the top of my head. We have a a large number of kids in our programs at the high school, but you got to also understand, we're starting to build our student access to the programming at Butler Tech. Initially, our numbers weren't very high. Our kids didn't want to leave our campus. It's starting to get better now. And Butler Tech tries not to duplicate programming, whereas if you have it at the high school here, I don't also have it over here.
Right.
There's some exceptions to that when you look at their entire program, but the whole point is that we got to get kids in the right seats and get them in the right pathway. And I'm tired. It's my 31st year in education. I'm tired of the what now diplomas at the high school level where someone gets a diploma and it's what now. We want a pathway. It's a pathway to, I don't care if the student wants to go into the military, go in the workforce, want to go to a 2-year degree, want to go to a 4-year degree. I don't know if that's necessarily our decision, but our job is to make sure they have multiple opportunities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's our job.
Yeah.
And we've got to continue doing that.
I mean, with Butler Tech, for example, they have a very good culinary program.
They do.
And if we're bringing restaurants in, and we're trying to bring people in, you know, we might be training some of these children. The other thing is, unlike law enforcement where you have to be 21 to be a police officer in the state of Ohio, you'll have to be 18 to be a firefighter in Ohio. And they've got an excellent
They do.
firefighting school that when kids are coming out at 18, you know, they could be taking tests for firefighting and be right in. I mean, they've got some really good programs there.
Well, I knew when I went over and I viewed some of the things that the firefighters had to do in order to get their credential, I knew that wasn't going to happen with me. I can tell you that right now. That's pretty impressive to watch some of those young folks going through that.
Thank you.
The last thing we have for you this evening is we had a variety of different construction projects, updates with regards to what we're doing throughout the district with our facilities. Jeff Kilby, our Executive Director of Business, probably if he would have known what he had to deal with COVID last year, maybe wouldn't have accepted the job when we offered it to him. He's, you know, the job of the business manager changed exponentially when all of that went down. I guarantee he hadn't considered about purchasing of masks or you know, some of the things that we've had to do with ventilation systems and you know, sanitizer, but he has, on top of trying to make sure the district's still running and functioning from a business operations standpoint. So tonight, it's my honor to present Jeff Kilby to talk a little bit about our business operations in the district.
Thank you, Mike, and I appreciate the opportunity. I don't often get a chance to brag about our staff in business operations. We have an amazing, dedicated staff working food service, working as bus drivers, working as maintenance, our trades, and what I'm hoping to get across tonight is, one, we're very busy. Two, we're having to face a lot of challenges with COVID and everything that's going on. We're short-staffed. I'll talk a little bit about that. And the third thing I'd like to talk about with all of our projects is how smart this board has been investing in permanent improvement money, because we are facing a lot of projects coming up, roofing projects, and if we were not planning for that, again, we have 8 elementary schools that are all the same age, chillers the same age, roofs the same age, and we're getting to be 13, 14 years old in those buildings, and you'll see some things here that we've been working on due to the age of these buildings all happening at once. So it's, you know, it's great that we have that available to us. Just real quick, our Buildings and Grounds Department, just to kind of put it in perspective, we have 1.5 million square feet of building space and almost 100 acres of grounds that we maintain. I don't know if you've seen the Spooky Nook, or that is that's 1 million square feet, and we're 500,000 bigger than that. So we have a lot. We have a lot that we're taking care of in-house. I think we should also add, we very rarely outsource to maintain our facilities. So we are getting a lot done. We've completed over 3,000 work requests. This is from August 1 of last year to August 1 of this year. anything from HVAC issues, service calls, painting, locks, broken desk, you name it. Again, we're doing that in-house, and we're staying real busy. As you know, this year too, we parted ways with Aramark after about 25 plus years. So that's another job, a full job that we had to absorb in-house. So Tom Schuler's taking that on in his Buildings and Ground Department. We're able to hire Josh Steubenvall from Mount Healthy, who is our new Buildings and Grounds Coordinator, and he's helping take some of those roles that Aramark was doing for us. But it's more of a blended job. But again, that's more work that we're taking on, and we're accepting the challenge, and they're working hard. But again, we have a lot going on, and we're doing a lot of that stuff in-house. I want to thank the custodians. When you think about this last year, what they've been through, the extra cleaning, sanitizing, lunch duties, we had to bring a person from the second shift to create a mid-shift person just so we could sanitize restrooms, which left us shorthanded at night oftentimes. Sometimes we only had one person in a building, in a school building, at night, one custodian. They've done an amazing job, so I just want to thank those custodians.
Sure.
Talk a little bit about food service. Again, so for about 3 or 4 years, I think this is our third year with the food truck out during the summer. We're going out to the splash parks, visiting those parks. We hit 1,600 meals this year, which is the most we've ever done. I'm not quite sure what changed this year. People were just excited to get outside, maybe, but 1,600 meals, and there were often times where we had to start turning folks away, where you can only put so much food on the truck when we go out, where we did not have enough food on the truck to continue feeding people. And again, keep in mind, anyone over 18 or under 18 that shows up, that's a free meal. We're not charging them. So, a little bit more about food services. Last year, we served 1.3 million meals. That's a lot of meals. Overcoming social distancing, face masks, no self-service. Again, it's difficult finding substitute employees to work due to the unknown. We missed over 1,300 days if you combined all of our quarantine, sick, personal, everything. 1,300 days where we were without staff members. Here's one of the challenges we're running into. This is probably the first time we've ever had to talk about this. We are actually having a hard time sourcing certain food items. Pizza dough, bread, tortilla shells, croissants, whole grain crackers. Cindy Gorbon is having to spend up to 2 to 4 hours twice a week just with our food suppliers trying to make sure, what are the options? And she's getting some pushback from her cooks that are going, pizza dough is terrible. What are we doing here? And this is one of our challenges that we're facing this year that we've never had to face before. We're not sounding the alarm just yet. We are making do, but it's something, we kind of want to plant that seed. This is something that is coming, obviously outside our control. This is a national
You think this
issue.
is going to continue?
I sure hope not.
I hear about this in a lot of different
Yes,
supply lines.
Right, and on the next slide, we'll talk about, I'll move forward. Cisco is the second largest food distributor in the country, and just on the 19th of this month, they announced that they're stopping restaurant deliveries for 2 weeks in order to catch up.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's
How are restaurants going to survive that?
Just a personal story of somebody over the weekend who went to a Bob Evans, I believe, on their way home from Columbus or something like that. And they had the menu, and then they had next to it things we don't have. So it's being felt out there, and we're not immune to that. So far, so good.
I hear it's with staffing too. I've been to a lot of restaurants where the staff is
Yes.
almost cut in half.
I think for us, our food service department, the idea that we were able to find employees because that school day long, those hours are still, they're attractive to work those hours. But just today, we had 14 food service employees that were out just today. So
Sick or quarantined or?
various reasons, but yes. So it's an issue. The second thing, just here a few days ago, the School Nutrition Association sent out recommendations to the USDA to ease the pressure on our programs. They're basically asking for, hey, can you lighten what your restrictions are on nutrition? Because we may not be able to get those foods. So it's a challenge right now.
Well, it's hard to, the supply chains from being restaurant to residential and then back again
Correct.
like they had to do.
Right.
Wow.
So it's a challenge right now, and may be no other bigger challenge than transportation right now. I know that Mr. Holbrook had sent out some communication about a server that was down last week that caused us some problems in transportation. At the same time, we had our director of transportation who resigned. Fortunately, Becky Gusey, our former transportation director, was willing to come back and work for us for a little bit. But again, we're down 10 bus drivers probably over the last 3 or 4 years. We hired 2 this year, but we lost 4. We are doing our best. We are really. I've talked to a couple principals today where they were starting to feel that things were getting on track. We're doing better, so we're getting there. I do want to bring up to our bus drivers. Last week when our server was down, I've been visiting transportation pretty much daily. They were doing an awesome job. They're on the two-way radio. They're basically doing this old school by paper. Hey, this route doesn't make sense that I was just on. I need to make this change. This kid should be on that bus. It was pretty impressive, the way the communication that was going on between bus drivers and Desi and Kathy and Becky back at the shop. So it was, they worked really hard to try to clean this up. So we're not quite there yet, but I think by the end of this week, we're going to be on the right track. So
That's good to know. And I know how, I've worked with bus drivers over the years
Yeah.
and how hard they work for our kids and wanting just to keep them safe and doing all that stuff. So
Right.
that's really cool.
And the other thing I wanted to bring up before we move on, our bus drivers were out there during the midst of COVID
Exactly.
too,
Yes, they
delivering
were.
to different sites
Yep.
on a daily basis, as was our food service workers. And I can't stress that enough. And that needs to be mentioned every single time we talk about, we talk about different things. They really showed a dedication to that. And they're making it happen. I mean, down that many drivers, they're making it work. They are.
Yep. So really, that's just an update. We're doing our best. It's not for, we're certainly trying. Like I said, we fired a couple, but lost some others. So it's a challenge we're fighting through, but we'll do our best.
Jeff, is there any thought of, I know that a few years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, we went to where all the buses show up at one time and you weren't doing multiple routes at each school. There was a time when there was multiple routes, like a bus would grab a group of kids, take them out, and then come back. Has there been any talk about trying to do anything back to that?
We did. We were trying.
Yeah. I know there's pros and cons.
Chad Allen, we had talked about that earlier in the summer. Obviously, Becky's there now, and she did not find that to help us.
Okay.
So I know they looked at that this
figured that,
summer and decided it wasn't the best route. So just real quick, this snapshot, I Googled bus driver shortages in Ohio. Just find there's 1,410,000 results there. So
So
it's not just us.
If anybody's watching this, wants to be a bus driver.
Hopefully, people are watching tonight. Get some bus drivers out of it. We need them. I want to spend some time to talk about our project list. Again, there's a ton here, so I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to highlight some with some pictures here and a couple slides. We've been incredibly busy. Tom Schuler has put a lot of time into a lot of these projects and buildings and grounds. So just want to thank him for all the work that he's doing. But we've got a lot of work that we've been getting done over the past year. Like I said, there's more, and then there's some more. But the ones I want to highlight are, here's one of the water heaters at one of our elementary schools. We've replaced 8 of those in the past year. So again, that's our buildings, 13, 14 years old. So 4 of our elementary schools, we've replaced both of those water heaters. And that's roughly about $18,000 per school to replace 2. And we have permanent improvement money to take care of that. So that's a perfect example of why it is so important that we're putting money away for these kinds of things. Here's a picture of 2 rooftop units at the high school. They serve the 600 wing, the main common lobby, and the principal's office. I think these were probably installed, if I had to guess, Bob, you may know better than I, probably about the time that the media center was updated, which I think was early 2000. So again, again, that was two rooftop units that we're being able to pay for the replacement of out of permanent improvement dollars. We had a pretty substantial project over at Garfield this summer. I don't know if anybody's made it over there yet, but this is, as we were underway, tearing apart the front office workstations, new ceiling pads, new lighting. We added an office for mental health interviews, new carpeting. That was a pretty big project that we had going on this summer. There's some more. And then here's what we've got afterwards. Again, I thank Mr. Shermer, Mr. Schuler, and SHP that helped worked on that design. I think Mr. Shermer, I have to give him credit for that carpet. I love that carpet.
Yeah.
I think he was the one that picked that out.
Very nice.
Yeah, turned out
Professional looking.
really good. This was the media center also at Garfield, where we replaced the carpet. I think the furniture was about a year old, but we got that carpet done this year, and it looks great, too. You guys all noticed here at the board, we had some scaffolding going on for quite a while, and a little bit of a tunnel. So that was to fix the cupola on top of the building. We also replaced the roofing. One thing I'll point out here, we went to a metal roof on the cupola as opposed to the shingles, and this was a new experience for me too. I'm gonna mess up what it was called, but I had to go, because we're a historic building, I had to ask for a, what do we call this?
ADRB?
Certificate of Appropriateness from the City of Hamilton's Architectural Design Review Board. So
They
that
passed
was,
it?
they did.
Okay, good.
So we are approved. We're legal. But that was a new experience for me. I have not had any projects where I had to really worry about the Historical Society. In fact, this was a historic building, so that was a new experience, learning experience for
When
me.
do we get to go up there and see what, is there a
Oh,
stairway?
you're up there right now.
You can get up there. There's a hatch and a ladder, but we can get up there if you'd like. Here's some more of this, actually the shingled roof. We were able to turn in to our insurance company because it was able to be determined that there was some storm damage to the shingles. So we actually will receive a settlement of $51,000 for that roof project. So that's more than half of what this roof project cost. And there's another picture of the flat roof that's up there. Here's a picture of us having the bulbs at the high school stadium replaced over the summer. We did a full lamp replacement, and unfortunately, we determined that bulbs were not the only problem over there. We still have several lights that are out, and the issue was somewhere between the ballast and the light in the pool. So, of course, you'll see on our upcoming projects, we're moving forward with the stadium lighting replacement to LEDs. So the timing could not be better for that. Again, permanent improvement dollars. I want to point this out too. This goes back to the age of our elementary schools. If you've been to our elementary schools, there's these dividing walls between the cafeteria and the gyms that have a fabric material on them, and kids love to pick at it. It gets torn. We have to have somebody come in and repair. So again, I'll give Mr. Schuler credit where credit's due. He said, hey, why don't we try painting these things? So we had the fabric removed and pulled off, and that's painted with an epoxy paint, and it's turned out great. And as we go forward here, because all of those walls in all the elementary schools are starting to get beat up, so that's the process we'll be doing moving forward. It'll be more durable. It's going to last way longer. So I think it turned out great. Again, here's some more of the upcoming projects. The big ones here that I'll try to highlight are, again, the stadium lighting. Another big one is the high school auditorium that we're looking into. And then right around the corner, we're working on some budgetary numbers for the stadium press box. So those are a couple of the ones that are big. They're starting to drill holes, I believe, this week for the girls softball team to get a new scoreboard at the high school. So that'll be a nice addition.
They're going to put it out in center field?
It is not in center field. But it's much bigger, so it almost reaches center field by the time it's installed. So, yeah, it's a nice scoreboard. Yeah. And also, you'll see up there the district air filters that we're upgrading. That's based on the recommendations by the Ohio Department of Health, and for COVID, what they recommend. So we're in the process of replacing all of our air filters in the district. The last thing I want to talk about was the Bridgeport Highlands property. If you're not aware of where that's the piece of land across the street from the school. So you have Bridgeport Road. Try to find a good one. So there's Bridgeport Drive. The school would be south of Bridgeport Drive on that. And it won't let me zoom in, but so earlier this year we were, the way values are, it made sense to kind of take stock of what our properties were and where they were at. We started looking into this. What we discovered was, through looking into things, Bridgeport Drive is actually not a dedicated street. It is basically, essentially, it's an easement that's going through our property that is not a city street. So we've been advised that it would make sense for us to go ahead and have that street dedicated. So I've contracted with Bear Becker. We've done some topographical surveys for us, and they've actually just got this information this week. They've come back to us. Over the years, detention pond basin, rules and regulations have changed. In order for us to dedicate that street, we have to now get up to code on that storm basin, which is, if you can picture that's actually shouldn't be a basketball court. That should be the tennis courts.
I was going to say that's tennis court.
Yeah, be the tennis courts. So that area to the left, that has to be risen. They have to raise the grade on that retention basin there. So we're working through that. Like I said, I just got that information this week. We'll start working on drawings and what the cost of that is going to be. I don't have that information yet. Something we're working towards.
It doesn't need to be deeper, it needs to be shallower?
It needs to be, no, we're building it up.
Okay.
It needs to be raised a certain elevation. They're 1 foot to 2.5 feet. Yeah.
That won't
If
be
we
cheap.
don't dedicate it,
Want to put some dirt in?
then we're responsible for the repairs of it,
Correct.
and
We're liable for
plowing.
anything that might happen on that street if we don't have that street dedicated.
Makes sense. to-
How did this slip by? I mean, this,
Right,
like 14 years ago, right?
yeah.
That was the second round of buildings. Was that
Yeah.
the third?
And we've also discovered, since I was hired here, I'd always seen drawings where it showed the 11 plots of land that were across the street from the schools.
Yeah.
That was never completed either. It's this. It's all one big piece of property.
They never
Where-
split it?
Yeah, so we've never actually had those lots divided, and
Surveys?
Surveyed.
not that we necessarily need to. I mean, obviously, that's a board decision, but that never actually occurred. We did put some money into it, I think 5 or 6 years ago. The district paid for the sewer survey, so if anything was ever done with that land, that piece of it's already completed and it lasts forever. So, but yeah,
Are you talking about north of the freshman building, those lots?
Bridgeport,
Bridgeport.
yes, correct. If you see it just looks like wild grass. We maintain like 10 feet off the road,
Yeah.
just so it looks like it's not overgrown, but
I
yeah.
know one
UDF
time
should
there were
go.
building lots there that the schools wanted to sell off.
That's what he's
Yeah.
talking about, but they weren't
They've
certain.
not been
Okay,
subdivided.
They were
But
never, it
sometimes-
was never completed that they were broken in. There's room for 11 lots there, and like I said, we have the drawings that show, and these are new. Bear Becker, since we started looking into it, they've went out and redone the surveying. Again, it's not completed, but that's what they would look like, is the 11 lots.
I was just-
We've had discussions about that because, they're just sitting there.
Yeah,
Why not get some money out of them?
yeah.
Yeah.
That was the whole purpose of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Get rid of the liability.
Are the houses, are the lots that face West Elkton Road, those are still in city limits? Are those still in our limits? Because West,
It's
really
new-
weird in there.
Right. It is weird right there.
Yeah. Be- Guess we'll
You
find
know,
out one of these days.
that might be,
25 miles an hour, I know that.
it may
I know
be,
it is too.
it could be
Yes,
that it's
I found out
partial.
the hard way too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
looking at
sure.
this,
I'm sure.
looking at this, the property, you know, off of West Elton Road actually belongs in Hamilton, but the road's actually in.
It's gonna, I think it's gonna end up being in Hamilton because it's all one parcel. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so it's all-
You're right.
If the school's in Hamilton, which it is, then the whole thing's gonna be.
Do we have any plans of approaching a developer or somebody that may?
We would, but we would have to, even if, I believe from talking to Bear Becker, if we wanted to move forward with that, this retention pond work would still have to be done.
Yeah, I'm,
How
You still would have to,
expensive
the street would still have to be dedicated before we would want to do that.
Right.
So this work that we're going to try to take care of first would
How
still have to be
How
done.
expensive is the retention pond issue?
They have not gotten me those numbers
Yeah.
yet.
Will the selling the lots help pay for the retention?
Could be. Could be. So, but that's where we're at. So that was all I had. Any questions?
Jeff, thank you.
Mr. Kilby, I just have to tell you that a husband who had been in your kind of line of work, this is really hard work, so
We
thank
have
you.
very fortunate. We have very, very good people that work here,
Yes.
so.
Do, and that's been one of the nice things about Hamilton over the years, knowing some of the people that work in all the different, food service, buses, maintenance, custodial. You've really accumulated a good group of people that have really worked hard for our kids. And I know, we talk a lot about the teachers, but that's a group that works hard day in and day out, and they don't always get the glory. But being here through all this stuff and having to put up with all the COVID restrictions and stuff, that's above and beyond.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
And
Did a
thank you
great
for all your
job.
work on
All right.
Yep,
Thank you.
yep.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Holbrook?
I think we have exhausted our agenda. for
I think
tonight.
we have, and if anybody's watching, hopefully they're still awake. So anyway, our next meeting will be on September 9th.
To turn over to ESPN.
Yeah, that's right. It's almost 7 o'clock. September 9th is our next meeting. Our executive session will be at 4:30, 5:30 for our work session, and 6:30 for our regular public section. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for all the reports. Thank you.
Thanks.